Hello, and thanks for watching another episode of ARFCOM News. Today, I want to tell you about the ridiculous lawsuit Mexico filed against U.S. gun makers and some well-deserved news in the courts at both ends of the country. But before we get started, I want to introduce you to the luxurious comfort and style inherent in every TNVC purchase. Discriminating connoisseurs like yourself deserve nothing but the finest in low-light viewing devices, so stop by and see what TNVC.com can do for you. If you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, take a look at our sponsor, TNVC.com, your source for quality night vision gear to make you the bump in the night. Mexico, long known as a shining beacon of safety and rule of law, where the officials are without question above reproach, has sued Smith & Wesson, Barrett, Beretta, Glock, and Colt because if it weren't for those companies selling guns, the cartels would settle their disputes by earnestly listening to each other's grievances and through binding third-party arbitration as a last resort. Seriously though, meanwhile, back in the real world, the lawsuit claims the named companies are aware of and responsible for a deluge of guns trafficked from the U.S. to Mexico, and references an AFT study claiming 70% of crime guns in Mexico were traced back to the U.S. Now let's just go ahead and skip past the part where the AFT was the organization that smuggled guns to Mexico in order to push a political narrative that U.S. guns were being sent to Mexico, so they can't exactly be trusted to produce accurate numbers in this subject. And instead, let's focus on how that number is just pure, uncut, weapons-grade garbage squeezins. See, it is true that 70% of the guns recovered from crime scenes, which were able to be traced, originally came from the U.S. Frankly, I'm surprised it isn't a higher number. First, it's only 70% of the guns they were able to trace. Obviously, the full-auto AKs from all corners of the globe and the literal boatloads of belt-fed RPDs smuggled from the new Afghan regime won't be traceable at all. Of course, most of the traceable guns are from the US because that's how first world record-keeping works. And because most of them were sold to the Mexican army and police. By the power of Grayskull, why is this even a question? Hey, here's an idea. Maybe the US and Mexican governments could stop giving out guns to cocaine dealers. Could we give that a shot? In totally unrelated news, the Mexican Navy is working toward a deal to buy $5.5 million worth of rifles from Sig Sauer. This deal can't go through without State Department approval, though, because ITAR applies. And, for the reasons stated above, the State Department could be understandably reluctant to allow it. So, what do you guys think? Should state give the approval? Will these guns just end up with a cartel also? Armed is not automatically the same thing as armed and dangerous. So no, you can't handcuff a man and stick him in the back of your cruiser just because he has a gun and a permit. Duh. Doing legal things doesn't create probable cause or reasonable suspicion just because you could do illegal things. Again, duh. We really shouldn't have to say these things out loud, right? I mean, no, you cannot search my trunk just because I could fit a body in there. But when a Waterbury, Connecticut police officer, whose name I won't even try to pronounce, stopped a man in a bad neighborhood, he handcuffed him and put him in the back of his cruiser. Mixelplicht said he did so because even though the man showed him a concealed carry permit, he didn't know if it was valid until he ran it. Now, I've heard some dumb excuses in my life, but that one is dumb enough that not only did the U.S. District Court find Mixelplicht violated the man's constitutional rights in detaining him, they found his excuse was so poor it doesn't even invoke qualified immunity, saying, "No reasonable officer could conclude the plaintiff posed a meaningful threat of being armed and dangerous simply because he disclosed he had a pistol and a license to possess it. Any contrary holding would make it practically impossible for the lawful owner of a firearm to maintain a Fourth Amendment right to privacy in his or her automobile." And the U.S. District Court for the District of Hawaii struck down 2 onerous and ridiculous provisions of Hawaiian law which were clearly intended to harass legal gun owners with no possible public safety intentions. One requirement was that a person who managed to get a permit to buy a gun has to make the purchase within 10 days of getting the permit. The other requirement was that after buying their gun, the proud new owner would then need to proceed directly to the police department within 5 days for it to be inspected and registered. Why does this have to be done in person? Because they say so. No, really, the state offered no evidence whatsoever and only a few speculative reasons, which wouldn't even have any impact on public safety if they were assumed to be true. Naturally, the court saw through this nonsense and struck down both provisions under intermediate scrutiny. Well, friends, that's all I have for you today, but before I go, I just want to remind you to take the time to keep up the pressure on your Congress critters to oppose anti-gun lobbyist David Chipman as director of the AFT. Details and phone numbers are in the doobly-doo. And if you want to get email alerts for the best deals, projects we're working on, and the hottest stuff you missed on the ARFCOM forums, you'll also find a Linktree link down there in the doobly-doo for our newsletter. And remember, our robot overlords in the tube of yous know what we want better than we do for ourselves, so they helpfully unsubscribe viewers from channels like ARFCOM, which express wrongthink. You guys know censorship makes puppies cry, and Captain America is very disappointed. So don't forget to check every now and then just to be sure you're still subscribed to us. But while you're at it, make sure you ring that notification bell so you never miss a word of our gun rights propaganda. If you want to help us keep bringing you banger content like this, please support the folks who support us. Not only does TNVC.com give you night vision with that cool, refreshing, never bitter taste that goes down smooth, they also have mounts, lights, swag, and all sorts of other gear to make you the bump of the night. I love you.